So we are going to turn our time over to our speakers today. We've got Sergeant Harding and Sergeant Hooley from Spanish Fork Police Department. And, I just asked them to kind of give us some statistics about what they're facing every day and some ideas for ways that we as community members can help them in their awesome job that they do every day. And then after their presentation is over, we'll open up to questions. Thanks.
First of all, I just want to thank the Rotary for inviting us out to chat with you guys and get to know you guys a little bit. As was introduced, I'm Cade Harding. I'm a sergeant with the police department. I'll let Sergeant Hooley introduce himself when he gets up here. I'm going to talk a little bit about our organization and the structure. We're going through some changes right now, and we kind of want to bring you guys up to speed on that and kind of what direction we're going for the future here. And we'll go through that and some of the trends we're seeing with our recruitment and different things like that. And then I'll turn the time over to Sergeant Hooley. He's going to talk about some crime trends and some different things we're seeing on that side of things with the department. So I guess we'll just start off with probably the biggest news for our department in a while. Chief Steve Adams has decided he's going to retire in January. We're really happy for him and hope that he's got a lot of great things to do in his future retirement. He's been an amazing leader for our department, and he's done some really great things and put Spanish Fork Police Department in a really great place to move forward. So with that, we have recently completed the testing process for our new chief, and it was just announced the end of last week that Matt Johnson will be the new police chief of Spanish Fork. So we're really excited to have Matt. Matt's been a longtime lieutenant with the department, and he has everyone's support, and we think he's going to do a really amazing job and carry on that tradition that Chief Adams has put in place. So that's kind of the big announcement for us. As we talk about our organization, we have three divisions within our organization. So the chief is the head of the organization, obviously. He's also the public safety director. So the chief's not only in charge of the police department, he's also in charge of the fire and EMS departments as well. So he has a really big job. Within the police department itself, there's three divisions under the chief. Each one of those divisions is led by a lieutenant. And so you've got a patrol lieutenant, an investigations lieutenant, and then an administrative lieutenant. Our patrol division right now, well, I guess the department as a whole, we should cover that. We have 41 officers that are sworn in the city, so we're growing and trying to keep up with the population and the business growth we're having. But that's kind of a big number as I think about how far we've come even since the time that I've been here. So we've got 41 sworn officers right now. 19 of those officers are assigned as patrolmen in our patrol division. Those patrolmen are led by 4 patrol sergeants. And then, of course, above the patrol sergeants, you have the patrol lieutenant. In our investigations division, you have your investigations lieutenant, and then you have your investigations sergeant, which is actually Sergeant Hooley. And he's in charge of our investigators and our detectives that work on our investigation side of the building. And they encompass a wide scope. We've got everyone from school resource officers, which we have 5 school resource officers that we partner with Nebo School District to provide police officers in the schools. And then we have 2 drug enforcement detectives. One's assigned to a major crime task force with Utah County, and then the other drug officer works primarily within the city of Spanish Fork on specific issues we have here. And then we also have a couple of investigators that handle the property crimes and person crimes that come along with everything else that we do at the police department. So that kind of encompasses our investigation division. And then I am the sergeant over the administrative division, and I work underneath the administrative lieutenant. And then the administrative division takes in all of our support staff, our office personnel. We handle our animal control officers underneath us, the code enforcement officers underneath administration, crossing guards, and so we kind of handle all of those other support elements of the police department. So that's kind of our structure in a whole. We're really excited because we're growing and evolving as a department. We actually have some changes coming between now and the first of the year. We anticipate that we're probably going to have up to 4 of our officers retire, including the chief, which, as you can see, is pretty much 10% of our department. So that's going to be a big change for us. We're going to have some new faces. People were talking about how, you know, they used to know all the police officers in town, and now there's a lot of new ones, and we're going to have even more new ones. So, but we're excited for the future. We're looking forward to bringing on these new officers and kind of bringing up the next generation of police officers for Spanish Fork City. So that's kind of all that I have for the structure-wise of the department. I'm going to turn the time over to Sergeant Hooley, and he's going to talk to you a little bit, and then after that, we'll just kind of open it up to question and answer. So,
thank you, Sergeant Harding. I'm Sergeant Clay Hooley, and I'll give a little introduction to myself. So, I'm not from here. I'm a transplant to Spanish Fork, and I bring that up every time because as we grow and as our department grows, there's many more like me that are not from here. We move here and we integrate here. But one thing I can speak for highly in terms of the community in our police department is even those who are not from here, once we're here, we love it. And we want to make it better and be a better servant to the community and a better neighbor, community member. And so I've been that person, and it's been really good experience for me. I started my career with Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office, and I was up there for almost 3 years. And then actually at the time I was going to get out of law enforcement. I wasn't having the greatest experience. And my wife's grandpa was a Utah County Sheriff's deputy. And he really encouraged me to test for Spanish Fork City Police Department. And he says, if you can't have success and happiness there, you won't find it anywhere in law enforcement. So that's why I came down here. So I've been here for almost 10 years now. And I've had some awesome opportunities. I've been able to work in the schools with the children. I've worked on patrol. I've worked in investigations. I worked on the K-9 unit. And all of that has been kind of this accumulation to get me to where I am today. So right now I'm over investigations for our department. And I have an awesome group of officers that create just a superior team when it comes to investigating crimes and keeping our community safe. So today I want to talk a little bit about just some of the things that we're experiencing in general day to day, how we as community members can help decrease that, and then how we can warn those around us to stay safe and prevent them from being victims of crimes. So on a day-to-day type of thing, we're growing, and with growth comes congestion, comes more people. I know Sergeant Harding deals with this all the time, but we're having a battle with traffic issues, speeding issues, traffic accidents. And we're trying to be creative in the way we design roads or the way we have traffic flow go, or as you see, we're putting up roundabouts throughout the city to try and decrease accidents. But what I've learned as a community member, the most important thing we can do is set the example. It's not so much what we say or how we call each other out, but rather just the way we conduct ourselves. So if we're having problems with speeding in our neighborhood, then let's be the people that don't speed. Or if we're seeing accidents in this intersection, then slow down. Or if you have youth drivers or 16, 17-year-olds, be the example of seatbelts and those little things that is such a minority or such a simple thing to do, but can have such a positive outcome as far as having a good result. I know our patrol division is dealing with that a lot. Accidents, speeding, whatever it may be, the congestion that comes with growth. And I think we can overcome it by just, like I said, being the example and working together. On my end, on the investigation side, how it works is, people call 911 or they'll file a complaint or they'll have a concern. And 9 times out of 10, a patrol officer will take that initial call. They'll be the ones representing the department in uniform, in a marked unit, a marked patrol vehicle, and they'll do what's called an initial investigation. So if someone calls and says someone broke into my house or into my car, a patrol officer takes that call, and that officer will cover the basics, the who, what, when, where, and why, or as far as they can take it. And then their workload's daunting. So as more calls come in, they have to kind of triage what they can do and then pass it off. And so when it's passed off, it comes to my team. And then we're the ones that have the time and resources and availability to investigate further. And so I've been seeing a few trends lately with things that our community is experiencing. And fortunately, a lot of it's preventable. And it's really, really simple. We just got to get the word out there. As we've investigated criminals over the years and we've learned that, some of their patterns or some of the repeat things we've learned that most crimes are of opportunity. Very, very seldom do we have someone who will go cause a great scene or kick in a door or something along those lines, but it's a crime of opportunity. Recently, we've had groups of people traveling through, whether they come from Salt Lake County or Sanpete County, or wherever they come from, or even here local. They'll go throughout our neighborhoods at night, and they simply go through driveways and they check doors of vehicles. And they just keep moving along, and the second they find a vehicle that's unlocked, that's their crime of opportunity. There's no smashing and grabbing. It's quiet, it's swift, and they'll get into those cars. They'll take what's of simple value to them or something that they find will further their operation along their criminal ways, and then they act upon it. And when they do this, sometimes they're alone or sometimes they have to act in groups, but they can canvass a whole neighborhood or even a whole city pretty quickly throughout the night. And we've seen that a lot lately. Fortunately, we live in a good community where we love our neighbors, we trust our friends, we're integrated, whether it's a community or a religion or a school, whatever it may be. And sometimes I think we get complacent. And although the community is great, we do live in a day and age where complacency does not bode well with not being a victim of a crime. So do the simple things. Close your garage, lock your vehicles. I know maybe it's contrary to how we were raised or how we feel, but lock your doors. And in my experience, you'll prevent yourself from being a victim, and if you simply pass that word along, we'll hopefully save a lot of our neighbors from the same type of thing as well. Another big vulnerable area of our community is we have scammers worldwide, and Spanish Fork is not exempt to this. We are having people call, email, whatever it may be, they're scammers. And here's the rule of thumb, and hopefully you've heard or been made aware of some of these scams out there, but they go from someone calling to be part of or pretending to be from the IRS, and they'll claim that you have back taxes and they'll threaten to arrest you if you don't pay your taxes, or they'll be from another country and they claim they need to get money to someone and they need you to get gift cards for them and send it to certain people, and so we have these scams going on. And so here's the simple steps. Anyone who asks for your information or money over the phone, you simply say no. That's not how it works. Legitimate companies that you're not reaching out to, that you haven't verified, the IRS doesn't call and ask for money. There's other procedures that they'll go through. And so you just say no. And if it's persistent and you're confused or you're not sure what to do, then the next step is you call us. And we'll tell you probably within a minute of whether or not it's real or whether it's a scam. That hit personal to my family. I have my grandmother has been a subject of a target of these scams, and fortunately on her end, she has two sons or grandsons in law enforcement, and we've had good conversations with her, and we've been able to educate her on it's not how it works. Just say no, and if you come across something that's confusing, then certainly call us and we'll direct you in the right direction. Yeah, those are kind of the things I wanted to touch on, really. The growth of patrol, the daunting task that they have to keep us safe and respond to the emergencies, and then the simple things we can do as community members. So even in my community, you always get the questions, well, what's the neatest thing you did this week? Or tell me the best story you have. Or what do I need to know? What's going on? How do I stay safe? And it's always really consistent for me. It's lock your doors, be a good neighbor, help them lock their doors or shoot them a text, hey, your garage is open, or whatever it may be, and then reach out to that population that you're close to that could be vulnerable to these scams. And I know for us, and not that we shy away from the workload, that's what we do and we're happy to do it, but our goal is to restore people or prevent them from being victimized. So that's kind of in a nutshell, kind of some good advice we have for you today. And with that, we're open for questions, and maybe I could take some questions, and we'll rotate between me and Sergeant Harding and go from there. So
the question is, I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, but so there's certain areas in town, parking lots of businesses that aren't currently in operation and things like that, where we get people that are staying long-term, either in a camper or their car, or sometimes they'll pitch a tent somewhere. Those are things that we constantly work on. Our code enforcement officer deals with those issues quite often. There's a couple of things that we come up against with that. The first one is that most of those places, the one you referred to specifically, the Kmart parking lot, that's private property. And so we're a little bit limited on what our options are for, we can't just go tow stuff off of those private areas. Now, there are mechanisms in place where if a car stays there for a certain period of time and the property owner contacts us, we can work with them to do an impound or tow a vehicle off of there. Typically, most of the time what we try to do is reach out to those people that are staying in those areas and let them know that, hey, you're not going to be allowed to stay here. We need you to move on, and we'll do those kind of things. And then kind of with everything else that the police department does, we start with the least intrusive and lowest level of force, I guess, if you will, and then if we need to, then we evolve it from there and take additional actions as we go forward. One thing that I do want to touch on is the city and the police department and our legal department, we've all been working together to try to come up with a, I don't know if you want to call it a camping ordinance, but basically a long-term stay ordinance for camping and stuff like that. What we're finding is that as things like that have a tendency to move from the north to the south, right? And as they do that, Provo will put in an ordinance that says, hey, you can't camp or stay in a tent in Provo. Then they'll move to Springville, and Springville will put in an ordinance that says you can't camp or stay in a tent in Springville. And so that's kind of where we're at. It's filtered down to us. And so that's something we're actively working on, and I'm sure the city council will be looking at putting that ordinance in place if they haven't already. So as far as your question specifically, what do you do? Give us a call. Let us know. It's likely that we're probably already aware of them, and we may be working on either getting a hold of a property owner or trying to find a way to get them to move on out of the property. But we just have certain limitations where it's not public property, and we have to work with the owners of those properties and make sure that we're not overstepping, our authority in those areas. So, thanks. That's a good question. That is something that we're dealing with. It's a big topic right now. The question was, what do we do to help address the homeless that are in our community, and what can we do to help them out or whatever? And homelessness is a really kind of you wouldn't think it's a complex issue, but it is a complex issue. Part of the problem is there's a certain percentage of those people who are homeless who, as many resources and help that we can offer them, they won't take it, and they prefer to live the life that they're currently living. We may not all see that as a viable option as to how we would want to live, but we can go out to these people and offer some resources and help, and essentially they turn us down and they don't want it. And so that's probably the hardest part, is that those people there are resources out there. There's, unfortunately, we don't have a homeless shelter in Utah County, but there's the Food and Care Coalition in Provo, and they have some resources there, and even some housing resources that are in place. But those people have to want that help, and a lot of times, if they're going to accept some of that help, they have to live under certain guidelines, and some of them don't want to. They want to live the way they're living, whether it be substance abuse or whatever like that. And so it's one of those things that we deal with, and it's kind of a tricky thing because we want to help them. We want to, if we can provide for them, especially as we're going into the colder months of the year, a lot of times, we're trying to, if we have extra coats or whatever, we're trying to give those out and just try to help those people. But unfortunately, there's no easy answer. And a lot of times we get called on them, and we reach out to them and make sure that they're okay, that there's not an immediate medical issue for them or whatever. And if they are comfortable with the way they're at and they don't want the resources and help that we have to offer, homelessness is not a criminal thing. And so a lot of times we're limited there too. The question is, what are the outreach programs that the police department is involved in? And these are an amazing tool for us to reach out to the community and get involved. Shop with a Cop is coming up. That's a big event for us. Our officers get paired up with school-age children, and they get to go for a ride in a police car and have a breakfast, and then they're given some money to go out and shop at Walmart. And it's interesting to watch these kids and I'm always amazed at how unselfish most of them are, that they're more worried about getting presents for their brothers and sisters and even their mom and dad than they are about getting something for themselves. And so that's really a neat thing to do. We also have the police night out. That's usually in August after the 24th. That's a great event where we cook hot dogs down to the North Park and have people come out. We got all the fire trucks and the police vehicles and the SWAT vehicles, and we just invite people out to come have a hot dog with us and talk to us, and we do some little scooter events and different things for the kids, and just a good way to get involved with the community and in a setting that isn't, a lot of times we're dealing with people in settings that are uncomfortable and usually not the best, and so it's fun to have a setting where we could just get with people and it's low key and relaxed. Another, and you may not think of it as this, but Fiesta Days is a huge community outreach thing for us. Our officers spend a lot of hours during that week out in the community and interacting with the people of our citizens, and it's amazing. Like you won't see people all year long, but you'll see them on Fiesta Days down at the park, and so it's really good for us to do that. Our SROs are a multi-level tool because I consider that to be part of the community outreach. We're integrating our SROs into our schools, so they're with our young people day in and day out. Sorry, a school resource officer. And so they're assigned to the schools, and we also have a NOVA officer who's in our elementary schools, and he switches around to the different elementary schools. NOVA is a drug resistance and education program, so we're just trying to get with the youth and try to steer them into making some really good decisions that will hopefully benefit them for the rest of their lives. So the best excuse to give when you get pulled over. Well, I could tell you from my perspective, the problem is now there's 40 officers, right? They may all have a different answer. And honestly, the thing that would work best for me, or has in the past, was complete honesty. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just have to admit when you messed up and we're going a little too fast, and we all deserve a break every once in a while, so you never know, it might just work. The question is, how's the morale of the police department been over the last year and a half, or maybe coming up on 2 years now, with everything that's been going on? And that's honestly a great question. And I can tell you from a law enforcement family, if you will, as a whole, it's been a really difficult time. We don't all live in the same community or work in the same community, but we kind of all do the same job. And so when you see, other law enforcement officers that are basically being treated really poorly, that kind of hits home a little bit. And it has been a difficult time. I mean, it seems like it was a long ways away, but we had stuff going on in Salt Lake and Provo, and we had officers from our agency, Salt Lake and Provo, put out the call for help, and we had actually officers from Spanish Fork that went up and helped in Salt Lake. And so it was a long ways away, but it wasn't that far away, and so it's still pretty close to home. I can say that probably the most amazing thing that came out of that whole thing was the support that we felt from the community. And I think for Spanish Fork PD as a whole and our morale, that support and love, if you will, from the community is really what kept us going when things were kind of rough, and let us know that even though there are things going on out there where
So the question is how do we deal with bullying? There's lots of things on social media, as referenced here, that reference bullying and how it's going on, and what are we as a department doing to address those issues and concerns? When the first time I spoke, I touched on, leading by example. First and foremost, bullying is an issue, and it's something that we're passionate about in terms of stopping it and making sure everyone feels loved and appreciated. And it all starts with being the example and being the person that's doing the right thing in the right place. I think one of the biggest influences we have as a department to help with bullying seems to come in the ages of elementary schools or junior highs or middle schools. And the focus we put on there is making sure our officers are in the schools, teaching about these things. I know Cade, Sergeant Harding touched on the NOVA program that we do in the elementary schools. You know, it is designed to teach decision-making about things that can harm us, but it's also designed to teach about the way we treat others. And I know for sure that they have a class. So every 5th grade student in our whole city is taught about bullying and what the effects and harms are and the ways that they can combat it. And so it starts there. The conversations are being had. The consequences are being presented. The examples are being afforded to the students by a friendly face in a uniform and with a badge, trying to set the example of treating others well. And then we actually have calls come in, you know, outside of schools, in homes, and maybe it's someone feeling down and we need to get them some help, and it's all originated from bullying. And then we enlist the armies to come help, you know, all the resources, everything that we can provide to them. We do that through victim advocacy work, or, you know, we have a full-time victim advocate here in our police department. I don't know if you guys know that, but a victim advocate is someone who we rely on. So anyone who's subjected to a crime or to bullying or whatever it may be, we have a full-time person who will reach out to them, meet with them, present resources, put in safety plans, enlist the officers' help when appropriate, enlist the help of local leaders, and or even the courts if needed, you know, legal action, whatever it may be, and it's a good tool. It's a good tool, and so kind of what Sergeant Harding talked about, sometimes we start with the least invasive step, and we build upon it depending on the need of the situation. But bullying is real. We love our youth, and we want to see them all be happy and healthy and successful, so it's worth every bit of effort we put into it, for sure. What's our community? What are we dealing with as far as drugs go? You know, what are we experiencing? What's the percentage of people using, and what kind of problems are we having? And so my answer to this is probably less scientific and more of my personal experience. When I first started as a police officer in Spanish Fork, which is almost 10 years ago, I actually feel the drug problem was significantly worse than it is now. And I attribute that to a few things. One, I think we live in a good community where parenting and things are aligned to keep kids safe. Two, we have a proactive police department that is in the schools talking about these things. But I give a lot of credit. We have, over the last few years, had some really, really amazing drug detectives who are proactive and passionate. And frankly, at times, you know, when I imagine people using drugs, in the back of my mind, I would fear the response I would get from the police officers that are out there investigating these crimes on a full-time basis. The tricky thing about the drug world is it comes in ebbs and flows, or new substances are introduced, things that we haven't seen, more dangerous, and then there's always the relapses, you know, the people falling back on the things that they've experienced. Yeah, so the question is, what kind of words are being thrown around, or code names, or whatever you might hear from your youth or your children that you could watch out for. You know, in terms of junior high age and maybe elementary age, vaping is a new craze. While vaping is not illegal for everyone, it's certainly illegal for people underage. And that's a problem. We're having problems in our schools. Vaping is an electronic cigarette where a nicotine substance is put in a liquid form, and through an electronic system, it's turned into a vapor, and then you inhale it. I think it's popular because it doesn't overly stink. You know, you won't smell like cigarette smoke. It's easily accessible, and I don't know why it's popular, but it's an issue. Even in our middle schools and junior high, that's happening. So if you hear terms of vaping or e-cig, or, you know, those are new things that are, you know, not brand new, but certainly within the last several years that have come about. The problem with that is it's created a new avenue for other type of drug use. For example, marijuana can now be purchased in a liquid form, and through that same mechanism, you can ingest or inhale marijuana in an illegal manner through those same things. So sometimes, you know, we'll catch kids with these things, and they're willing to accept the nicotine version in effort to disguise the marijuana version. You know, they pick the easier route when it comes to a consequence. So those are some things training with our young kids. Overall, as a state and a nation, we're seeing scary things, you know, with fentanyl is a new drug. It's a powder that they're integrating into other drugs. It's very deadly and dangerous. So